You have transported us to a quantum world, but we are running out of time. We already finished our session. I will invite now. I will invite Jean-Marc Dennis from Atos Bull. We're coming on the ground and looking at the European initiative on ExaScale and also the microprocessor initiative, very similar to India, what we are doing. Thank you. We're eager to listen to you.
Thank you very much. So let me start with one statement. You will hate me at the end of the presentation because you have to stay up and well awake for the next 2 hours, especially if we're talking about the European story, which is by many aspects very related to quantum stuff, because everything that happens in Europe is very complex, very confused, and in many states, 27 states simultaneously. So let me explain in this presentation what's going to happen in the next years in Europe related to ExaScale Computing. So today, I'm not talking as an Atos employee. I'm talking representing Europe, and I can see this is a huge responsibility that I'm the speaker for Europe today. There is no one else from Europe, so it's a huge responsibility, and that will be the first part of my presentation. In the second section of my presentation, I'm going to talk about the European microprocessor initiative that Atos is driving in behalf of Europe, not in behalf of Atos as an industrial company, and I am chairing the initiative for Atos. So that will be in that context that I will make that presentation. So, sorry, you will fall asleep in 5 seconds. So in Europe, there are a lot of complexity. The Commission, the Parliament, everything talk in acronyms. So you have to learn this list of acronyms during the next 5 seconds, and I move to the next slide. So what is important to understand is not the acronyms. This is the real story that I'm going to explain. So that package of slides comes from EuroHPC, let's say agreement between member states. So this is official documentation you can find on the European Commission website. So EuroHPC, what are we talking about? Everything comes from President Juncker, who is the president of the European Commission. He set a strategic objective for Europe in October 2015. This is to create in Europe at least 2 ExaScale computers by 2020, but over time we have changed a bit the context, because if you remember back in 2015, everyone thought that getting exaflop supercomputers in a reduced power envelope was possible by 2020. So from that, things have moved a bit, and we are thinking much more about production ExaScale computing later on in the next decade. So the goal is to have one of the top 3 machines in ExaScale computing in Europe based on European technology as soon as possible. This is a strong statement from President Juncker. And from that, it's been asked by the Vice President Andrus Ansip, who is in charge of numerical economy and data economy, to encourage the European countries to create something jointly together based on the Horizon 2020 initiative and budget package, and to federate all of them. So, starting from that, some leading countries, Germany, France, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Portugal, and Spain, decided to sign a declaration to support a new generation of supercomputing class systems in Europe. And the name of that initiative, covering the overall ecosystem from infrastructure to application, is called EuroHPC. And through time, the 27 members will join the initiative. So that initiative was signed in March this year by the 7 countries, And since that signature date, we have now 13 countries having joined EuroHPC, and by the end of next year, the 27 countries will be in the initiative. So you can see here the declaration of intention in the governance model of the EuroHPC initiative, which is basically to implement by the end of this year a roadmap that address all the needs for HPC, and this is very much similar to what has been discussed in extent today by the NSM mission, from infrastructure to student education through all the different components. The microprocessor that I'm going to talk about later, the computer, the infrastructure, the project management process, the selection of applications, the development environment, everything has to be covered in this initiative. And the goal for Europe is not only to create that supercomputing environment or the ExaScale environment in Europe, but this is to create a European industry for this. The goal of Europe is to make Europe becoming a worldwide economical leader in the industry of IT in the next century. So the ambition is great, the budget is great. So EuroHPC budget has been evaluated in the range of 5 billion euro for covering all the needs. So some 1.5 billion for the pre-ExaScale and ExaScale machines, 1.7 for the interconnection. Don't get me wrong, it's not about the interconnect. This is for the global network between the 27 countries for getting access to the resources. 500 million for developing the microprocessor and for getting the SME have access to the HPC facilities. More than 1 billion euro for developing, demoing, and testing applications. You can see that the application package is very significant, more than the processor and the hardware by many aspects. And the MFF is a multi-year funding framework that has been decided and that is almost finished by 2020 is 1 billion, and we need around 4 billion in the next decade coming from the next European Commission. So at this stage, the Commission is negotiating with EuroHPC countries to define the content of the package. So now when we look at the rationale for the investment and the relation to the roadmap, so forget the acronyms, they are a bit complex and there is a lot of legal aspect behind that, so I will not treat that question. Look at the timeline. So, no way we start from the top with a big or too big ExaScale machine at the beginning. So, we have to learn. On the learning curve, there will be, let's say, demo system. I'm going to explain on the next slide. And there will be pre-ExaScale systems that will be in the range of several hundreds of, let's say, exaflop, exadata, exa whatever, but let's say a significant fraction of one ExaScale machine. And then those pre-ExaScale machines should be in production by 2020, 2021. And then from that experience, the 2 ExaScale machines will be put in production in Europe. I'm a bit close to the microphone, by 2022 and 2023. The goal is not to get experimental machine. The goal is to get production system at the benefit of the science in Europe, at the benefit of the users from the industrial side, and also at the benefit of the industrials manufacturing the computers and manufacturing the components in the ExaScale machines. So the more detailed roadmap is explained on this official slide from Europe. So in the different work package in 2014, 2015, it was more dedicated to the definition of the components. So what should be the component toward pre-ExaScale systems? At hardware, at software, at development system, at application level, at programming language, at communication level. All of that has to be defined. So it's been defined a couple of years ago. Now we are closing a phase where we are defining the system architecture on the software package. This is extremely important to start from rock-solid foundations. And from those foundations, then we can start developing the technology. And this is what will come up in the next couple of years with the development of a microprocessor. You can see on the top, and the current budget is 120 million euro. That is obviously not enough for developing a microprocessor concept. I will explain. That should be much more. So in the next years, more will come. There will be extreme scale demonstrator just to demo the class of technology we need for pre-ExaScale and ExaScale. That will be deployed before 2020. And then there will be also a test bed for HPC, big data and cloud computing, also artificial intelligence, to put in production some key concepts that are in parallel with the co-design aspect of the extreme scale demonstrator. And then there is the users land with PRAISE, the Center of Excellence, the pre-ExaScale system procured through PPI mechanisms on all the interconnectivity between the different countries. So all of that is already secured at the budget level in the range of 800 million euro, which is in US dollar, which is more common for most of the people, about 1 billion US dollar. So that's it for the description of the European strategy. So I'm going to explain the European Processor Initiative. But the key word for the European initiative, the European ExaScale Initiative, is it is a well-structured approach, starting from the governance model with PRAISE in the past, then the structured with EuroHPC, then the different high-level concept at software and hardware with architecture, then testbed on proof of concept, then pre-ExaScale systems, then ExaScale system. So it takes more time, but that will go straight to production from day one. So part of the initiative is the development of a European microprocessor. Ultimately, the goal is to get in Europe intellectual property on the world-class microprocessor ecosystem. So again, this is back to the declaration of President Juncker, and in a sub-declaration from Günther Oettinger, the implementation of the political statement from the president was very clearly explained in the acquisition of two co-design between users and manufacturers. Prototype ExaScale system in 2020 onto operational systems, so systems for production, by 2022, at least one, based on European technology, which will rank in the top 3 at the worldwide level. Very clear statement given by the Commission to the countries and to the industry. So, EPI, so that European Processor Initiative, is a strategic initiative for Europe. So it's been implemented through an official procurement from the Commission, which is called a Framework Partnership Agreement. And the objective is very clearly explained. On the first implementation that will cover the years by 2018 to 2020 will be to make the design, to select a consortium that will be invited to co-design with the Commission the architecture, the governance model, the funding mechanisms for the development of a European low-power processor. By the way, low power doesn't mean it's a sub-watt microprocessor. It means it's an HPC microprocessor, okay, with a decent power envelope. Let's say above 50 gigaflop per watt in double precision. This is more or less the class of processor that is thought about. So after the selection process, the European Processor Initiative has been selected, and the goal is for strengthening the competitiveness and the leadership of European industry and science. It is an industrial project at first, to develop a European processor that is as green as possible, with a world-class performance per watt ratio. And last point, which is also critical for the Commission, is to get a sustainable economical model. If you consider that developing a microprocessor is €500 million, if you just produce that microprocessor for exascale demand, that will not cover the financial equation. It's a few hundreds of thousands of units to be produced per year. You can't cover the production cost, you can't cover the development cost. So there will be a downscale version or several downscale versions of that microprocessor that will cover the needs of the European industry. And the top European industry is car manufacturing industry. So there will be, I will explain in the next seconds, a downscale version of that microprocessor for the European car industry. So the drivers for the EPI is to get at first high performance computing for exascale machines in Europe and beyond exascale machines. In a second step, to get a downscale version for mobility and for ADAS, which is Advanced Driver Assistance Systems, that is required by the European car manufacturing industry. And beyond that, in the context of autonomous drive, to extend to servers, to cloud, to edge computing, and to very low power compute systems for covering the complete European landscape on any aspect. So the mission is to provide to Europe and the Commission and the countries sovereignty in terms of intellectual property, in terms of high performance computing. This is to provide to Europe exascale machines by 2022 in production, and to create a solid and long-term economical model. So from that, the vision is to develop and sell that microprocessor that is connected to exactly what I have described. So the consortium is very interesting because in this consortium, you have amongst the top European industry companies and top European research centers and universities. We are 23. You have BMW, well, I will not describe Infineon as well for car manufacturing. You've got Bull for the IT industry. Then you've got top European HPC centers like BSC, like CEA, like Jülich, like Italian Cineca. So it's a huge consortium. And in this consortium, if we look at the combination of the strengths, we are more than 350K employees in total for revenue or turnover above 120 billion euros. So you can see that behind this initiative, there is a very solid economic support. And then we have combined the strengths by, let's say, expertise level. So for automotive at the top, BMW, which is a leading automotive industry, Electrobic, Infineon, and Carre, that will develop all the embedded features for autonomous drive. For the IT industry, that will be led by Bull with Italian experts, with ST, with E4, Extol from Germany, and Semidynamics, which is a company that designs microprocessors coming from Spain. And then you have all the top academic leaders and HPC centers in Europe for defining the usage model and making the raw research we need, especially in software area for compilers and libraries. So the partners are well distributed in Europe. So I'm going to move fast on this point. And we need to cover at the economical system the complete value chain from technical marketing, which is the high end. This is a bad word to talk about the architecture concept, to architecture, hardware, software, reference board, supercomputer design and implementation, applications, support of the users, and then prepare the next generation with market demands. So the ambition is to cover the world needs over time. So in terms of technologies that we are going to implement for developing the microprocessors, there will be three streams of development. So at first, obviously, this is not a specific stream. There is a common stream for everyone, which is to make the system architecture and to co-design the silicon process, to make the choice of the silicon process we will make. And then we will develop the core technologies and the IPs that we need for developing the microprocessor. Then the very first implementation will be at the top, based on ARM. For some reasons I cannot explain today, because I'm running out of time. ARM IP is located in Europe, so it's fully compatible with the European strategy. And it is a well-controlled IP, and it's quite open as an IP. So it's a very good choice for us to start developing our ExaScale microprocessor based on ARM. Then, because we need an accelerator for ExaScale Computing, we have decided to investigate and to invest on RISC-V, which will become, over time, on the long term, it could become our mainstream development, including microprocessor. But to start with, it's much easier to implement RISC-V in a coprocessor, so in an accelerator solution. And then all of that, over time, will be used for the automotive processor on embedded computing, and that will be the third stream of development for us. So, globally speaking, the ambition is obviously to cover in that initiative HPC demands, autonomous drive, with also servers, cloud, and edge computing, and this is a core development that will obviously include the fundamental concept for deep learning and artificial intelligence with convolution budget in the silicon that we are going to implement. And over time, in terms of sovereignty and also covering the safety and critical aspects, we will address the needs of aerospace and the industry 4.0 and robotics that will evolve through time, including in Europe. So in terms of roadmap, which is also very important. So we are going to develop the two first streams around ARM and around RISC-V. And we are going to get a first generation by 2021 for the microprocessor and for the accelerator. That will be used for the pre-ExaScale systems. Then that will help to make a proof of concept for the autonomous for the automotive industry. Then we will develop the second generation of both the microprocessor and the accelerator that will be used for the HPC, for the ExaScale system that will be deployed by 2022 and 2023. And obviously that will drive, with a downscale version, the car manufacturing industry. And then we already think about what's going to happen beyond ExaScale computing. We are already thinking about merging the two concepts about general purpose microprocessor that could become over time maybe a kind of proxy for several accelerators, and that could be mixed, or that could stay as a general purpose microprocessor with the accelerator that will contain more and more general purpose features. It's just brainstorming at this stage. It's just pure laboratory thinking, but this is something that could be merged if we can gain at the economical level from this. So now when you map the European Processor Initiative, Euro HPC, on the different worldwide initiative we know in ExaScale area, and I promise I'm going to add the Indian NSM ExaScale machine by 2022, you will have your line on this chart. I promise. So you can see that ambition is not to be aligned with the US or China or Japan for having the very first exaflop machine. We prefer to focus on the production level to get something that is rock solid, even if it is 18 months later or 2 years later, but at least to get a very solid economic return on the investment that is made at the European level. You know, 5 billion euro is a huge budget. So the taxpayers, so the people in Europe have to get something in return for their money. So they will get production level ExaScale Computing, and they will get a European microelectronic industry in place. This is the goal of the Commission, to get a return on investment at the science level and at the industry level, and ultimately at the job and employment level. So you can see that the European approach is very, very similar to what India is going to implement. So I see a lot of proximity in the two approach that would be interesting to explore more in depth. So if we look at the 24 first months, and this is the end of my presentation, so the EPI has been selected. So there will be official communication about that in the first quarter of next year. So we will co-design the content of the budget of the first phase by the end of first quarter. Then we will add additional partners and to embed lead customers with us by the end of the second quarter. Then we will receive the first funds from the European Union at that time. We will start developing the microprocessor, and then by the end of 2019, we will tape out the first generation. This is a very ambitious timeline. It looks to be long, but indeed this is extra short, especially when you start from an almost blank page, especially for the accelerator. So that will be a huge chance. And anyway, in 1 year, for the next session, or in 6 months, I will be able to give you much more detail, especially at the technical level, because from this roadmap, you can see that it's too early for I can disclose the first ideas we already have. So this is the end of that presentation. So I thank you very much. And you can see that Europe is really wanting to create something strong in Europe based on European industry, European IP at the benefit of Europe. I'm just very pleased to see that India is following exactly the same path. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Dennis, for that very vivid presentation, with characteristic European clarity and the timelines. There is so much to learn from the European initiative, and I'm really amazed to see how similar we are approaching the whole issue. The budgets are different, but if you see the purchasing power parity and other things, they are also very similar. There's so much to learn from you. Of course, I don't know, we'll discuss how we can collaborate, how we can internationally collaborate. So now we are really run out of time. I think quite some time, and I have to invite. Shall I do that? You will do that. Yeah, Dr. Saraswat. Now we have a very difficult task. I think that to please conclude and present us the takeaways which you have to carry.
I won't take much time because it's already too late. But I can only take one message from here, that today it has been a very absorbing session with industry, academia, and the research laboratories pitching into the national supercomputing mission. The frequency is completely matched. I find that there's a chord of nationalism in this particular program which has been vibrating, and that gives me a good feeling that we will be in a position to harness the synergy of all the three, and or rather all the four pillars, for making this program successful. The last three talks which we heard just now, I think they are very attractive solutions, maybe some in the near future and some in the long term. Particularly, I personally believe that the last talk with the European Union, I think it is lot of things are common, and we need to look at what kind of a collaboration we can strike. I certainly believe that there is a very strong case for us to take the clue from what Dr. Krishna Saraswat has mentioned about silicon photonics, interconnects, on chip, off chip. I think it was such a fantastic talk, told most complex subject, told in such plain and simple words that even people like me could understand and appreciate what are the intricacies of doing this. I would only request Dr. Saraswat that if it is possible to initiate a silicon photonics lab in either an industry or in academic institution in India, and his support in terms of making this activity vividly clear for our future applications. I certainly feel that if we have to do ExaScale, we have to plunge ourselves in a deep manner in getting the silicon photonics as integral part of the ExaScale computing. May not be in the phase 1, but at least in the phase 2, we need to certainly get into that. As far as the other qubit and that kind of a system is concerned, I think neuromorphic, yes, there is a possibility, but I think qubit is a long-term objective. Only one doubt I had was that even in the neuromorphic, if I am going to use PCI Express as a interconnect, I think that is going to be, in my view, and that is going to be one of your, slowing device. So, so it has to be looked at. As far as CDEC and this NSM program is concerned, both software, middleware, hardware activities as presented by my team are well known to you now. I think as suggested by some of you, we would like to now make certain verticals, because we have 4 teams. Among each teams, I think we would like to incorporate members from the industrial fraternity to start contributing in the design process, in the development process, as well as in the realization of the hardware and software. These are various phases in which we would like. So my request to all the people present here is, you know now what are the verticals. You can indicate your choice in which vertical you would like to be part thereof, so that we can then start I would rather saying that you come and work in this. It is better that now you identify based upon your interest and capabilities what vertical you would like to join. So this is another suggestion I can give. And finally, I would like to thank all the members from the industry who are present here, my friends from international community, and all the organizers for doing a wonderful job of bringing all of us together. And the fact of the success of this conclave is seen that it is about 8:30 and the hall is full with full attention from all of you. My kudos to all of you for the great interest which you have shown. We are really grateful and hope this interest continues for making NSM a success. Thank you very much.
Before we break, I think it's our duty to honor the guest on the dais. So can I request Dr. Vijay Bhatkar to kindly honor the guest, please?
request the panelists to be please stay back for a group photo.